What if I told you that the moments when life felt most chaotic were not because others had too much control over you, but because you had too little authority over yourself and your surroundings? Think about that scene at work where no one wants to take responsibility. The meeting drags on endlessly, people talk in circles, and in the end, nothing changes. Or maybe at home where small decisions, who pays the bills, who takes care of the kids, who sets the rules, become endless negotiations that leave everyone exhausted. We often confuse being kind with being passive and being respected with being liked. Yet in practice, the absence of authority creates frustration, not freedom. Everyone has experienced that silent anger when no one leads, when rules are unclear, and when relationships collapse into endless debates that solve nothing. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine thinker often misunderstood as a champion of manipulation, saw something most of us miss. Authority is not the enemy of harmony, it is its foundation. Authority is what transforms chaos into order, uncertainty into direction, and hesitation into action. Without it, families fracture, organizations stagnate, and even the strongest friendships dissolve. This is not about domination, nor about silencing others. It is about courage. The courage to say, "This is the path we're taking." The courage to define limits when no one else dares to. The courage to endure the discomfort of being unpopular today so that something greater can grow tomorrow. And here is the paradox. The people we most admire in our lives, the teachers who inspired us, the bosses who guided us, the friends who protected us, were not those who tried to please everyone, but those who carried the weight of authority when others could not. So I want you to pause and reflect. In your own story, where have you abandoned your authority out of fear of being rejected? Where have you chosen silence when what was needed was a firm word? Because today, we're going to explore why imposing authority, far from being cruel or oppressive, might actually be the best choice you can make, not just for yourself, but for those who depend on you. And before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments, do you remember a moment when someone's authority saved you from chaos? Or perhaps when the absence of authority made everything fall apart? If this resonates with you, like this video and subscribe, because what we'll uncover here might just change the way you see leadership, respect, and even love. Imagine for a moment a life where you no longer hesitate. A life where, instead of second-guessing yourself, you speak with clarity and act with conviction. Picture walking into that same meeting at work, but this time, instead of waiting for someone else to take control, you calmly outline the steps forward. Suddenly, the room that once felt heavy with indecision begins to breathe again. People feel relieved because someone finally took the weight off their shoulders. Or think about your home. What if instead of endless arguments about trivial matters, there was a sense of stability, because clear authority created predictable rhythms? You and your partner stopped drowning in constant negotiations, and your children, instead of resisting boundaries, thrive under the safety of well-defined rules. That tension in your chest, that subtle anxiety that comes from disorder, slowly fades. Now stretch that vision further. How different would your friendships, your work, even your inner life look if you embraced authority not as a burden, but as a gift? What if people stopped seeing you as the nice one who avoids conflict and started recognizing you as the anchor they can rely on? Machiavelli once wrote that people prefer the security of a firm ruler over the chaos of weak governance. Translate that into your own existence. Authority is not about controlling others. It's about providing a structure that protects everyone from falling into disorder. When you embody authority, you are not suffocating others. You are giving them space to flourish because they no longer live in constant uncertainty. Here's the deeper tension. Many of us secretly long for authority, not just to follow it, but to embody it. Yet we resist it out of fear of rejection, of being judged as too harsh, of losing affection. But what if in reality the opposite is true? What if the more you impose authority with wisdom and fairness, the more people actually respect you, trust you, and even love you? Let that image settle. You, not as a tyrant but as a pillar. Someone who stands firm while others waver. Someone whose presence brings peace precisely because you are not afraid to impose order when necessary. So I ask you, how would your life look if you embraced that role fully? Would the people around you suffer? Or would they finally breathe easier, knowing that someone had the courage to lead? We live in a culture that praises flexibility, openness, and endless tolerance. The message is clear. Don't be too firm. Don't draw hard lines. Don't impose yourself. We are told that authority is oppressive, outdated, almost toxic. But let's be brutally honest. Has this mindset really made us stronger, freer, or happier? Look closely, and you'll see the cracks. Families where parents try to be friends instead of leaders often collapse into chaos. Workplaces where managers avoid being too authoritarian drown in inefficiency. Relationships where no one dares to set limits end in resentment and quiet hostility. The pursuit of total softness has not brought us harmony. It has brought us confusion. Here's the disruptive truth. Authority is not the enemy of love, respect, or freedom. On the contrary, without authority, none of these can survive. Love without authority dissolves into indulgence. Respect without authority evaporates into politeness without depth. Freedom without authority degenerates into disorder, where the strongest or the loudest dominate by default. Machiavelli shocked his contemporaries by saying it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. Most people misread this as cynicism, but what he was really pointing out is that human beings crave structure more than empty affection. They need someone to set direction, even if it comes with discomfort. Because deep down we all know, comfort without order eventually becomes unbearable. Think of your own life. Those who shaped you the most, teachers, mentors, even parents, were rarely the ones who let you do whatever you wanted. They were the ones who held the line, who demanded more of you, who imposed authority not because they despised you, but because they saw in you the potential to grow. At the time, it may have felt restrictive. Today, you recognize it as love in its highest form. So here's the disruption. Perhaps real kindness is not indulgence but authority. Perhaps real compassion is not endless agreement, but the courage to say no. And perhaps the most loving act you can offer those around you is not softness but firmness. The world tells you authority is dangerous. I challenge you to see that the absence of authority is far more destructive. The question is, do you have the courage to embrace that uncomfortable truth? When Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince in the 16th century, he wasn't offering a handbook for tyrants, as many still believe. He was exposing the raw mechanics of power and survival in human communities. His insight was harsh, yes, but it was also liberating. Leadership requires authority, and without it, even the noblest intentions collapse. But let's step beyond Machiavelli for a moment. Consider the Roman philosopher Seneca, who taught that true freedom is not the absence of discipline, but mastery over one's impulses. Discipline is authority applied inwardly. Without it, a person becomes a slave to whims, emotions, and the demands of others. Authority, whether external or internal, is what protects us from being consumed by chaos. Even modern psychology backs this up. Developmental research shows that children raised with authoritative parenting, a balance of warmth and firmness, consistently develop higher self-esteem, stronger social skills, and greater resilience. Notice the word, authoritative, not permissive. Too much softness weakens. Too much harshness crushes. The balance of clear authority and genuine care forms the foundation of human strength. So when we say that imposing authority might be the best choice you can make, we are not romanticizing domination. We are aligning with a truth that both ancient philosophers and modern scientists have observed. Communities need structure, families need order, individuals need discipline. And without someone willing to impose authority, these things unravel. Think of literature too. In the Odyssey, Odysseus does not simply wander, he commands. He holds his men together not by being endlessly agreeable, but by guiding them firmly through storms and temptations. Without his authority, the journey would have dissolved into tragedy long before reaching Ithaca. Authority, then, is not a threat to human flourishing, it is its foundation. And the absence of authority is not liberation, it is abandonment. This is the paradox that Machiavelli forces us to confront. When you avoid authority to appear kind, you may actually be committing a deeper cruelty, leaving others lost in confusion, unprotected, and directionless. So ask yourself, whose words shaped you more, those who always agreed with you, or those who dared to confront you with a firm, "This is what must be done." And if that is true for your past, why would it not be true for those who now look to you? Have you ever noticed how silence can feel heavier than words? When no one dares to lead, when rules are left unspoken, when boundaries are blurred, the result is not peace, but quiet tension. People may smile, conversations may appear polite, but beneath the surface, frustration grows like a shadow. This is the invisible cost of avoiding authority. Most of us think conflict comes from being too firm. In reality, much of the conflict in our lives arises from not being firm enough. When you avoid drawing lines, people don't become freer, they become more anxious. They don't know what to expect, what is acceptable, or what will suddenly cross an unspoken line. And in that uncertainty, resentment slowly builds. Think about relationships. How many couples collapse not because of cruelty, but because no one dares to say, "This is my limit, and I will hold it"? How many friendships fade because boundaries were never clear? How many workplaces drown in inefficiency because leaders are afraid of being labeled controlling? These are not failures of love, they are failures of authority. Machiavelli understood something we often forget. Where authority is absent, power doesn't disappear, it shifts. Someone will always seize it. In the absence of firm leadership, the loudest voice dominates, or the most manipulative personality quietly takes control. Without visible authority, hidden power structures emerge. The ones who care least about fairness often end up shaping the outcome. Here is the invisible dynamic. When you refuse to exercise authority, you are not protecting others. You are abandoning them. You are leaving them vulnerable to disorder, manipulation, or the tyranny of uncertainty. People may resent firm authority in the moment, but they will resent the absence of it far more deeply in the long run. This is why communities collapse without leaders, why families fracture without boundaries, and why even our own inner life falls apart without self-discipline. Authority is not simply about ruling others. It is about protecting them from the chaos that inevitably rushes in when no one steps up. So take a hard look at your own life. Where are you avoiding authority under the disguise of keeping the peace? And is that avoidance truly protecting others? Or is it silently eroding the very trust and stability you are trying to preserve? Authority is not cruelty. Authority is clarity. Avoiding authority does not create peace. It creates confusion. When you fail to lead, someone else, often less worthy, will. People do not resent authority as much as they resent insecurity. To love without limits is not love. It is indulgence. Authority is not about domination. It is about direction. Fear of rejection destroys more leaders than the abuse of power ever will. Weak authority breeds hidden tyranny. Strong authority creates visible order. If you want to be trusted, you must first dare to be firm. Machiavelli's lesson still echoes. People would rather face a firm hand than drown in uncertainty. These truths cut through the illusions we live by. We think kindness means always saying yes, but the deepest kindness often requires a no. We imagine that freedom comes from the absence of rules, yet true freedom emerges only when boundaries are clear. We want to be loved for our softness, but the respect, and even love, we seek is born from the strength to stand firm. Here's the hard reality. Authority is not optional. If you do not take it up consciously, it will appear elsewhere unconsciously. Someone will take the space you abandoned. Someone will exploit the vacuum you left. And the cost will not just be yours, it will fall on those you claim to care for. So remember these words, not as abstractions, but as principles to test in your daily life. Authority is not the end of love, it is its protector. Authority is not the death of freedom, it is its safeguard. Authority is not a mask for ego, it is a burden of responsibility. Let these sentences echo in your mind the next time you hesitate to lead. They are not slogans, they are reminders of a truth as old as civilization itself. Without authority, nothing endures. We often think in opposites: authority versus freedom, love versus fear, firmness versus kindness. Our culture tells us we must choose, be gentle or be strong, be liked or be respected. But what if these opposites are not contradictions at all? What if they are two sides of the same coin? Take freedom and authority. On the surface, they seem opposed. Authority restricts while freedom releases. Yet history and psychology show the opposite. Without authority, freedom collapses. Imagine a city with no laws. In theory, everyone is free. In practice, the strong dominate the weak and fear governs every street corner. Authority, far from destroying freedom, is the very structure that makes freedom possible. Now consider love and fear. Machiavelli's famous line, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both," has been twisted for centuries. But his point is subtle. He wasn't rejecting love. He was warning that love without authority is fragile. People may adore you, but when difficulties arise, affection evaporates unless it is rooted in respect. Fear here does not mean terror. It means the recognition that your words carry weight. True authority marries love and fear into something stronger: reverence. The same paradox applies to kindness and firmness. We believe kindness means always yielding, always forgiving, always softening. Yet a kindness without firmness becomes cruelty in disguise. Parents who refuse to discipline out of love raise children unprepared for reality. Leaders who avoid making hard decisions out of compassion allow teams to sink into dysfunction. Firmness, far from negating kindness, gives it backbone. These paradoxes are not comfortable. They cut against the way we want the world to work. We want simplicity, but human life thrives in tension. Real authority is the art of holding opposites together. Firm yet compassionate, strong yet fair, feared yet respected, decisive yet humble. So here is the paradox you must embrace. By imposing authority, you are not destroying love, freedom, or kindness. You are protecting them. Without authority, they cannot endure. Ask yourself, where in your life have you tried to separate what should have been united? Where have you chosen to be nice instead of authoritative, thinking you were protecting love, only to discover you were slowly killing it? Now let's bring this closer to you. What happens if you decide from this moment on to embrace authority rather than flee from it? The rewards are far more profound than you might imagine. First, you gain respect. Not the shallow respect of flattery, but the deep trust people feel when they know you will not waver in the face of difficulty. Those around you will begin to lean on you, not because you demand it, but because your firmness provides safety. Respect born of authority lasts longer than affection born of convenience. Second, you gain inner peace. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly second-guess yourself, to avoid conflict, to twist your words so no one feels offended. That is not peace. It is self-betrayal. When you embrace authority, your words and your convictions align. You no longer live split in two. Authority liberates you from the torment of endless hesitation. Third, you create stronger bonds. At first, people may resist your firmness, but over time, they will thank you for it. Children thrive when parents impose clear boundaries. Teams excel when leaders set decisive direction. Even friendships grow deeper when honesty is combined with respect. Authority, when exercised with fairness, deepens connection rather than weakens it. And finally, you grow. Authority forces you to mature because it carries weight. The moment you say, "This is the path we're taking," you assume responsibility for the outcome. That responsibility refines you, disciplines you, and stretches you beyond comfort. It shapes your character into something solid, something unshakable. Here is the promise. When you stop fearing authority and start embracing it, you will not only transform the way others see you, you will transform the way you see yourself. You will no longer be the person who avoids, who hides, who hesitates. You will become the person who carries weight, who brings order, who offers stability. Imagine the quiet strength of walking into any room, any relationship, any challenge, knowing that you will not crumble under pressure. That is the reward of authority. Not arrogance, not control, but dignity. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if from today forward you embrace the authority that has always been waiting inside you? To make sense of everything we've explored, let's place authority within a broader conceptual map. 3 traditions, philosophy, psychology, and history, converge to reveal its necessity. Philosophically, Aristotle spoke of virtue as the golden mean, the balance between excess and deficiency. Authority is precisely that balance. Too much becomes tyranny, too little becomes anarchy. But in its right measure, authority creates the conditions for human flourishing, because it channels freedom into purposeful direction. Without it, virtue cannot stabilize. Psychologically, Carl Jung emphasized the importance of integration, the need to confront and embrace our own shadow. Authority is one of those shadow elements. Many avoid it because it feels harsh, controlling, or prideful. Yet by denying it, they remain fragmented, governed by unconscious impulses or by the will of others. Only when we integrate authority into our character do we achieve wholeness. Historically, every enduring civilization has recognized this. The Roman Empire, the Athenian democracy, even the biblical tradition, all understood that authority was sacred, not simply practical. Authority was tied to responsibility, order, and justice. Where authority weakened, corruption and decline followed swiftly. The lesson repeats across centuries. Communities collapse not under the weight of authority, but under its absence. Now connect these three strands. Authority is not merely a tool of power, but a universal principle that sustains life at every level. In your personal psychology, it means self-discipline. In relationships, it means boundaries. In society, it means law and governance. Remove it from any layer, and collapse is inevitable. This is why Machiavelli's voice still matters. He stripped away illusions and reminded us that human beings crave structure more than indulgence. Leaders who fail to recognize this, whether in families or nations, condemn their people to chaos. Individuals who deny it condemn themselves to inner turmoil. So here's the framework. Authority is not optional, it is foundational. It is not a tool for domination, but the skeleton upon which love, freedom, and virtue depend. You cannot build a strong life, a strong family, or a strong community on the shifting sands of endless tolerance. You must root them in authority, and the invitation is clear. Stop seeing authority as something external imposed on you, and begin to see it as an inner capacity you are called to cultivate. Authority begins the moment you stop avoiding responsibility and start carrying it with courage. So here we are. We've traveled from the discomfort of chaos to the uncomfortable but liberating truth that authority is not oppression. It is the very foundation of love, respect, and freedom. Machiavelli knew it. Aristotle knew it. Seneca knew it. And deep down, you know it too. Think of the moments in your life when someone stepped into authority for your sake. Maybe it was a teacher who believed in you enough to demand more. Maybe it was a parent who set rules you hated at the time but later recognized as love. Maybe it was a friend who had the courage to tell you a hard truth when everyone else stayed silent. Those moments changed you. Not because someone gave you permission to do as you pleased, but because someone cared enough to draw a line. Now the question is no longer about others. It is about you. Who is waiting for your authority? Who in your family, your workplace, or your circle of friends needs you to stop hesitating and start leading? Where is your silence breeding confusion? And where could your firmness create peace? Here is the paradoxical gift. When you impose authority with fairness and courage, you will lose some approval in the moment, but you will gain lasting respect, deeper trust, and the dignity of knowing you did not abandon those who depended on you. Authority will stretch you, challenge you, even make you uncomfortable, but it will also transform you into someone solid, someone reliable, someone whose presence brings stability in a world drowning in uncertainty. So I ask you, will you keep hiding behind passivity, or will you dare to embrace authority as the best choice you can make? If this message resonated with you, let me hear from you in the comments. Share a time when someone's authority shaped your life, or a moment when the absence of authority led to chaos. Your story might be the spark that helps someone else find courage. And if you believe more people need to rediscover the true meaning of authority, hit the like button and subscribe. This is not just content, it is a journey of reclaiming character, responsibility, and strength. Because in the end, authority is not about power over others, it is about service. It is about carrying the weight so others don't have to. And that, perhaps, is the greatest act of love you can ever give.